charity to help relations with Britain and America, we're seeing a man who's intimately connected in with what I regard as international mercenary organisations. One of the papers that added a bit more was the Independent on Sunday, because they ran an article which was actually front page, and it said that Werity, and let's remember he is the man right alongside the then Secretary of State for Defence in Britain, Mr. Fox. Their headline said that Werity plotted with Mossad to target Iran. So what was happening at the time the Leanne Fox scandal came to the surface was that it was clear that in the background work was going on in order to help start some form of conflict with Iran. And it was very interesting that another British paper, the Daily Mail, ran some paragraphs in which it said that many officials in the Ministry of Defence in Britain were becoming very, very concerned because they knew that people were acting in a private capacity to influence defence. It's more like offence policy. And they also warned that Mossad was using useful idiots in the British government in order to help foment trouble on the world stage. So it was really quite interesting that if you did look right the way across the media, you could find a lot of information, but it was all in bits. There were other names that came forward in this scandal. One of them was Matthew Gould, the UK ambassador to Israel. He's an interesting character because he was originally the private parliamentary secretary to David Miliband. Of course, we've now got one of the Miliband brothers, Ed Miliband, who's leading the Labour Party in Britain. If we delve into his background, he comes from an absolutely dedicated Marxist family. So there's another little interesting bit. We find venture capitalists who donate £125,000 to the Conservative Party, but the real meat of it is in relation to an organisation called Pargav, and this effectively was a lobbying group that Adam Werity had set up. And once we start to look at Pargav, we find not effectively because it's been reported in the press, but it's been hidden. We have a Finnish-Israeli arms dealer who's worth some £2 billion. We have him connected to Pargav, and we learn that he donated £15,000 for Cameron's leadership campaign. So here we have David Cameron, who appears out of nowhere, we call him a toff schoolboy from Eton. He suddenly appears as the British Prime Minister, and now we're seeing that the type of people who funded his leadership campaign are major international arms dealers. But it gets better than that, because we can start to actually see that there are other groups involved. So there's the Thamires Investment Group, which was paying money into Pargav as well. And that company owns, it is said, about 40% of the major property in Las Vegas. Casinos, it's got property in Washington, New York, Times Square. So the people who are clustered around Mr. Werity and therefore intimately linked with Mr. Fox are certainly major and extremely wealthy people, including arms dealers. But we can get in a little bit deeper on this, because there was also a hedge fund called CQS involved. This was also linked through a man called Oliver Hilton into Pargav, and CQS invested some £21.5 million in a high-tech firm called L3. And when Mr. Fox scrapped Britain's Nimrods, these are equivalent to the American maritime patrol aircraft, such as the then P-3, they're the same age. But the moment those aircraft were scrapped, they cut the wings off them, they destroyed all the simulators. But by an amazing coincidence, they were then replaced by 3 Boeing RC-135 aircraft worth $650 million, and those aircraft came from L3. So you can see that there was wheeling and dealing going on with absolutely massive UK defence contracts that were being done through the back door by Mr. Werity and his organisation Pargav and Pargav Limited. So the major press, which has convinced people in Britain that it's a little bit of maybe slap and tickle between Mr. Fox and his best man, this is a smokescreen, because what has gone on in the background is absolutely massive arms deals. But of course, it's also exposed that David Cameron has been levered into power by international arms dealers.
And I mean, as you said, this just opened up a can of worms that never ends. There was another group which was connected to this scandal, which I mentioned at the start. You had Werity, of course, with Atlantic Bridge, but Atlantic Bridge, one of its main funders is this Israeli BICOM lobbyist groups, and from what I can see, no mainstream establishment newspaper has done a story on this astounding revelation, which came out in a leaked email, which was mistakenly sent by BICOM's CEO, this Israeli lobby group, to the press. And in this email, Brian, they brazenly boast about how they've penetrated BBC News and Sky News as a means of, quote, ensuring the most objectively favourable line was taken, end quote, in relation to a pro-Israeli stance in the news. Here's another quote in this leaked email. After contact with BICOM media team, Sky News changed their narrative in explaining the prior events in the region which led up to this weekend, and they're talking about the siege on the Israeli embassy back in September. So this group that funds Werity's Atlantic Bridge, in their own emails, brag about how, I mean, there's another one where they talk about they have a meeting with the BBC News editor. There's another quote where they say, quote, I briefed Jonathan Ford, the Financial Times lead writer, for his upcoming article. I briefed him. It's not that they gave him a quote or an interview. This lobby group is briefing our journalists, BBC, Sky News, Financial Times, on what to report. And they brag about how they made them change their narrative about certain events. And this is the group linked to Werity's Atlantic Bridge. So, I mean, Brian, we've caught them red-handed. This is how talking points in the media are generated. It's about how they dictate reality to us. So, I mean, what does this say about the so-called impartiality of the likes of the BBC and Sky News, that they're being briefed by pro-Israeli lobby groups?
Well, this is absolutely correct. I'd just like to say at this point, because I think it is an important thing to talk about. We're here talking about Israeli interests. The principal interest for us is what our own ministers are doing intermixing with these people. I can at the moment just sort of put a wall down and say the Israelis, separate country, whatever they want to do, they can get on and do it. We may not agree with all of it, but at the moment in Britain we are focusing on what our own politicians are doing, being bought or directed by these people. When I voted when I have voted in national elections, I don't ever remember voting on a basis that I wanted people who were actually working for Israel coming into my country. Now, the key man in this, Mr. Zabludowicz, was the man who was intimately linked with the British Israel Communications and Research Centre, and he donated some £800,000 to them. So we're not talking about small institutions who are short of a bit of money. We're talking about people who are directing sums of billions of pounds or billions of dollars, and they are capable of buying whole organisations and government, never mind a few individual people. But if you dig into BICOM, you very quickly find Mr. Fox's smiling face at their events. And the other important thing to realise is that this activity is not related to one party. It's not related to the British Conservative Party, because we've got individuals like Hazel Blear's MP for the Labour side, who's also intimately involved with them. In fact, I can also say that Michael Gove, who's now our Education Secretary, is another man who is happy to come under the BICOM fold. So I think that what we're really starting to ask is who are these people who are now in our Parliament, and who are they working for? And the UK column, we did it as a very measured article, but we ran an article which pointed out that David Cameron said that he would never break his allegiance to Israel. That was above everything. And so we said to him, can you explain to us, Mr. Cameron, how you can be the Prime Minister of Britain, which should be your ultimate responsibility, and in fact what you're saying is that your primary responsibility is to Israel? I believe that what we are seeing, well, I'm sure what we're seeing in the British Parliament at the moment, is utter treason. And we need to expose these people for what they really are, which is the spawn of international arms dealers. And of course, what do international arms dealers like? And it's very simple. They like wars and bloodshed because that's how they make their profit. So to now see this I can't really describe him in the right way, this horrible man, Cameron, calling on America to start yet another war to start millions of deaths. I hope that the average American citizen out there, and certainly the people listening to this show, start to think to themselves, we don't need American deaths in order to satisfy Mr. Cameron's personal ambitions.
It's amazing, and I mean, you talk about, we don't vote for people to be influenced by Israeli lobbyists. It doesn't matter what country they come from. Russian lobbyists, any kind of outside influence whatsoever, it's a violation of sovereignty. It's the complete opposite of representational democracy, and it's got no business being in our country. I mean, this Lorna Fitzsimmons of this BICOM group, she bragged it. I mean, these quotes just keep coming. Quote, public opinion does not influence foreign policy in Britain. Foreign policy is an elite issue. So that again goes to the core of what you're saying with these people. Outsiders coming in and directing our foreign policy at odds to what the British people actually want.
Yep.
Switching gears, Brian, though, yeah. And I want to get onto the child abuse issue in a moment, but we had this big story a couple of months ago. What do you think about YouTube pulling down the video of the protest at Birkenhead where members of your group attempted to arrest the judge due to a, quote, government removal request? That's what YouTube said, and they pulled the video. Well,
just to set the scene for listeners, a few months ago, in a totally peaceful demonstration, 600 people on the streets up in the Midlands in UK. Basically, a judge was arrested for running an unlawful court. Now, of course, the police did what we would expect of the police, which is that the police ended up defending the judge. He wasn't harmed, he wasn't assaulted anyway, but he was simply informed he was being put under arrest by the public because he was running an unlawful court. Now, you're quite right, because video footage of that was taken down with a statement that it was the government taking it down. This is highly significant, and I personally believe it's wonderful, it's excellent, because what it has shown, and people understand the meaning, is the government is terrified of what people can do when they've got proper knowledge and understanding of what's happening in their country. So the British